We are here today to discuss how to leverage the reset moment, how to not just get through COVID-19, but how to create opportunities and reinvent business as COVID recedes and the world resets. And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by Oli Barrett MBE. Welcome, Oli.
Hi, Hamish. Great to see you.
Excellent. Now, Oli has an absolutely fascinating background. I'm going to take you through it because it deserves a full reading. He is a serial co-founder of multiple ventures. The MBE, for those of you who are not UK listeners, is an honor bestowed by the Queen for services of national significance, in Oli's case relating to the entrepreneurial and business ecosystems. He's been described as the most connected man in Britain, according to The Independent, a leading broadsheet in the United Kingdom, and the consummate connector of people and ideas by Wired magazine. So, Oli, I think that captures you beautifully. And look, just for a bit of context, you and I have known each other for some time. When I was living in London, I think you were on one of our first OneLeap special missions when we assembled like a SWAT team of entrepreneurs alongside OneLeap consultants to work on identifying bold new opportunities for clients. But it's really a pleasure to have you back.
Thank you. No, it's great to be here. And those were very happy memories you've just stirred up there, because they were often about doing what I love best, which is connecting very different sorts of people and organization.
And you're actually the personification of something we often talk about in the corporate innovation space, which is you are one of these nodes who connect ideas between different worlds and people, because it's not just a case of networking to make connections between people. It's purposeful connections that meet ideas that actually lead to stuff getting done. But nonetheless, we do want to talk today explicitly about some of the opportunities of the reset moment as they emerge. And at least in OneLeap, we think about two types of opportunities that come out of these resets. So the first is, I think, the most intuitive one, what we call adaptations that stick. Then there's a slightly different species of opportunity, and our working title for that is upheavals. And that's where we recognize that COVID has been not just any disruptor where people have to duct tape their way through. It's been a rather fundamental disruptor. It's been a crisis. And I'm really curious to hear, if you were just to pick a few, what are some of the adaptations you think will stick, that you think are exciting? And are there any upheavals that you can see on the horizon?
What a great set of questions. I mean, the first thing is to sound a sort of uncharacteristically downbeat note, which I think there is a very real risk of huge numbers of people and organizations, and I see them, and I probably need to get better at expressing this concern, building back worse. And I have a very great fear that these moments will be lost. Yep. I think we've seen this new flexibility, and without going into how many days do we spend in an office, I think we might miss an opportunity to discuss how many days do we work in the first place. And by the way, if we're thinking about what these new office spaces look like, what will the new near home working spaces look like? And is there an opportunity for corporations to become connectors and hosts, welcoming in scientists for a hot desk, welcoming in academics, welcoming in students to interact with their organization? Because if we don't, we might have come out of a formal lockdown, but we will stay in a mental lockdown for the next few years. And I think that is disastrous. One example, Hamish, I'm no great rugby follower, but I do know that Sir Clive Woodward, who of course coached the England team for victory in the World Cup, sorry to bring it back up, all those years ago, he's adamant that you should debrief, particularly when things have gone really well. I think, frankly, for the organizations who have potentially managed to thrive over the last 18 months, it is equally important for them to be very specific about what worked well, as it is for those who, frankly, are picking up the pieces of their businesses and lives.
It reminds me of a conversation I had when in my previous life, and I was working in the Prime Minister's Strategy Unit, and I was seconded to the then new National Security Council. And I had a long conversation with military leaders about their lesson learning. And at the time, they used to call the lessons that came out, whether it was a crisis or something that went very well, as lessons learned. But they realized after a while that whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, the mere fact that they took the time to record those lessons didn't make them lessons learned. It made them lessons recorded.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's something there, Hamish, which I must just interrupt, because of course, famously Eisenhower said, plans are useless, but planning is everything. And maybe maybe the recovery equivalent is, reflections are useless, but reflecting is everything.
No, makes a great deal of sense. So look, you operate a lot in this space. Can you see any opportunities for leaders to promote this? How would you go about making that happen?
Well, I think we're starting to see new ways of connecting people. I'd like to see a rise in cross-sector peer mentoring programs, in the knowledge that we all have so much to learn from each other. I'd like to see a clearer definition of spaces where we can take risks with ideas, express ignorance, change our mind, be challenging, be provocative.
That brings me to, I guess, the leadership dimension, which we touched on before. The examples you've given me, I think, really good examples of what bold thinking can do coming out of the reset, right? But what are some of the traits of leaders who are going to succeed in helping their companies grab these bold opportunities that we've been discussing?
Yeah, so I think leaders have to become two things. Firstly, more connected, especially with their peers. But I would make the point that they need to connect peer to peer across networks, across geographies, on broader subjects about health, about relationships, about their own future, about becoming triathletes across sectors themselves. I think the other traits, and these are ones that I've heard firsthand from some very senior chief execs. Firstly, in the way they communicate. Many of them are doing this, which is going into a camera, but more regularly, more openly. Their newsletter might now be a thing of the past. So that more open communication, which leads to the second part of that, which is vulnerability. To say, I'm not just going to share with you the good news, I'm going to share you some of the biggest challenges, some of the biggest problems. I'm going to level with you about some of those things. And also building off the back of that point about being more open with how leaders share, that sense of vulnerability, that sense of uncertainty.
That's, I think, both sage advice, but hopefully provides a little relief for leaders seeking to navigate this uncertainty, that part of the answer is acknowledging it. And seeking to bridge the gaps that exist in their knowledge, as you say, by continuing to connect themselves, not just on the obvious issues, and facilitating that connectedness in their organizations. So I think that's very, very powerful advice to end with. Any last thoughts that you would leave us on leveraging the reset moment, Oli?
We have two enormous opportunities and I get to meet some of the most exciting startups in the world and some of the leading chief execs in the world. And I think at both extremes, we have a huge opportunity. Firstly, when someone starts a company for the first time, in the UK, it's incredibly, quotes, easy to physically start a company. I think we need to get better at planting the seeds in the minds of the 30,000 plus people a month that start a company here in Britain about what a company is and can be for. It's no good to then be having a separate set of conversations around impact and purpose and B corporations many years down the line. We have to re-embed in the seed of startup that idea that companies can solve problems for people, right? So that's at the one extreme. At the other extreme, we have to move beyond cash flow forecasts to impact forecasts. We have to take measurement more seriously. That, for me, isn't just the incremental little bit better bit of the reset. That's the opportunity for a huge leap. And we would be very, very unwise to miss that leap.
Yeah. That feels to me exactly like the sort of upheaval that is possible coming out of this. So, Oli Barrett, thank you very much for joining us, for all your wisdom and advice on that. And we wish you the very best of luck in your own emergence from COVID and making the most of the reset.
Thank you, Hamish. So good to see you. Can't wait to meet up properly again soon. Thank you.